Hi, I'm Kira Gorman, and you're listening to QEB Voices. Hello again. Welcome to the first installment of April's set of episodes. This month's episodes pick up on that theme of protest, especially as it happens in the creative arena, in the art we consume, in the stories we tell, in the ways we negotiate sites of contested memory and history through film, fiction, and poetry. In this week's thematic episode, I'll be speaking to two researchers from the Department of Arts, English and Languages here at Queen's about the power of cultural artefacts like film and literature to commemorate and to call to action, to uncover disappeared origin stories, and to reaffirm our identity, our humanity, and our right to see ourselves in both the future and the past of the world we live in. I hope you're as excited as I am to hear what they have to say. For our first foray into the world of creative protest, we're turning our gaze to the intersecting fields of film, history, and memory with Victoria Baltag, a PhD student here at AEL. Victoria, would you like to introduce yourself just to kick us off?
Hi, Kara. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. It means a lot to me. As you introduced me as a PhD student here at Queen's University Belfast, I would complete my presentation saying that I'm also a film researcher and scholar activist. My research topic is about Benjamin Fondan. He was an interbellum filmmaker. And while I am spending 3 years here at Queen's, I will try and I will do my best to bring his work back to our culture, just because all his work has been forgotten, especially in the field of film, because he is also a poet and a critic.
And Benjamin Fontaine is Romanian, isn't that right?
He was born in Iași in 1989, in 14th of November. And because his ancestry was Jewish, he was persecuted in Romania in that specific time. So he was forced to immigrate in Paris.
And what happened to his work when he went to Paris? Was he able to continue working or?
Yeah, actually, in Paris, he was really welcomed. He found beautiful people to cooperate with, and he was present in many literature and cultural associations. And he worked for Paramount Pictures. He was like starting being like a director assistant. He continued to write some scripts for actually very famous movies. He was writing the script for Rapt, the movie of Kirsanov, and it's really peculiar the fact that he wrote this script. This script is about conflicts of races. We all know what happened soon after with Nazi and the inconveniences opened with this wave promoted by them.
And he, if I remember rightly, he was really swept up in that, and I think he had a very, very sad and tragic end to his life. I think he was taken to a concentration camp, if I remember rightly.
Yes, unfortunately, in 1944, after he came back from Buenos Aires, in 1936, he directed a film considered a masterpiece by those who had the chance to see it. And I will mention here the writer Gloria Alcorta, who was mentioning this in several articles. He came back to Paris and he was captured by Nazi and gassed in 1944. And I would like to mention here that he had been offered release because, as I said, French people loved him very much for all the things he contributed to the cultural life back to those times. And so he refused just because he was captured with his sister Lena and she could not be rescued. And he could not let his heart live knowing that he was able to live and she would die. So he remained with her there.
And actually, if I can just cycle back there, you were talking about his masterpiece, that film. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
I call him the Nostradamus of interbellum cinema, interwar cinema to be more precise. In 1936, he directed this movie called Tararira. It's a musical that was considered a masterpiece and was produced and directed after he made several, I would say, premonitions in the cinema. So in 1933, he mentioned about 3D cinema and color cinema, when these things were not even projects back to those times, right? So he collected all this information that he had in his mind, and he was able to make a movie that was considered a little bit too much for those times.
Right.
And so in 1936, after he finished the movie, and he invited several journalists and friends and writers to come and see it, they were very moved by the project. But unfortunately, the producer of the film was not that happy with the result. And I have to say that the movie disappeared. So nowadays, we don't have too much information about this movie. We have dozens of making of pictures. We have the entire music because it was composed by a composer. We have the testimonies from the team and the actors, but the actual footage is missing. And so there are like 3 versions of this disappearance. One is like mentioning the fact that maybe the producer of this movie burned out the footage because he was not happy with the result. The second option is saying that maybe the movie was lost in the footage archives with the time, just because they could not find an international distributor, and so they lost it. They didn't care about it. And maybe the movie is somewhere hidden in Buenos Aires or maybe Paris in some film footage archives. And the third one is obviously, the possibility of Nazi work. Maybe they wanted to destroy the contribution of Benjamin Fondan and everything that he did because it was considered against their policies. So we don't know exactly how this movie disappeared, but the thing is, it was considered a masterpiece. It's a movie that must be known, must be analyzed, and my goal is either to find this movie, either to reproduce it.
That's absolutely amazing. It's like a mystery, isn't it? You could make a crime novel out of it or a thriller film. I would definitely go to see that in the cinema. And it's amazing to think that, the film was made and then there are 3 different options as to how it might have disappeared and we don't know where it is. It could be languishing in an archive somewhere or it could have been burned. It's crazy. And just to pick up there on, I suppose, your last point of the possibility of Nazi involvement, which would obviously be much more sinister than having it wasting away in an archive somewhere. The loss of cultural property was really quite common in and around the time of World War II. And in a wider context, of course, we know that the destruction of cultural heritage is recognized as a crime against humanity because we understand that losing access to culture in whatever form, films, monuments, museums, is hugely damaging to our psyche as humans. Like it cuts us off from the past. It destroys our memory, our history, our connection to community, all of those things that are part of the fabric of the human story. And recovering or rebuilding those cultural artifacts, just the way that you're doing with your search for the missing Fontaine film.
Thank you.
I suppose you might be able to see it in some ways as a form of protest, against efforts to break us as people, to break our spirit. I don't know, is this a reading of your work that you agree with?
Yes, totally. I've read yesterday a little article about culture, and they said, no culture, no future. So
true.
It's so important for us to promote the culture we have, to learn from it, to develop from it. And a few moments ago, before we've met for this podcast, I've seen a documentary film. The documentary film started with those who control the past, control the future. Those who control the present will be able to control the past. And with these words, I think I've said a lot. It's exactly what's happening. We know that the history is made by those who win, right?
Right.
And so these things about Benjamin Fontaine got forgotten. But in my opinion, is like he contributed for the worldwide culture through the things he did in film industry, in poetry, in literature. And for me, it's very important to bring him back to our cultural heritage because it's important to have him. It's important to maximize the novelties and the information he provided, to take it from there and to develop more. So totally agree with what you just mentioned, and I do my best to contribute with my work through this research.
You've really struck me with what you've said there about, I suppose, the links between power and authority and control over narratives of history and the past and the future. And it's really brought to mind the other half of your day job, as it were, because you mentioned at the beginning of this podcast that you are also a filmmaker, and your other act of creative protest on the go at the minute is your film, The Pitesh Experiment. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that? Because that's right at the intersection of this idea of, power over narrative and history and future.
Yeah, this is a project very close to my heart. I started it in 2011. It's treating a hidden topic, as you mentioned, the Pitești prison experiment. It's a part of the Romanian recent history between 1948 to 1952, when the best students in Romania were encouraged to become member of the party, the Communist Party, because the communists came to power in that time. And so those who refused, they were re-educated. And this re-education in brackets, was a mental and physical torture between the inmates. This method was discovered by Anton Semyonovich Makarenko, a pedagogue in the ex-URSSR. He came with this idea of re-educating the youngsters in order to have the new entity, the newborn human being, able to fulfill the requests of the party, of the new doctrine. And I came across this subject while studying for a summer school, because in that time I was a student at Birmingham University, and during the summer I applied for some summer schools in my country. And I was very curious about the communist crimes in my country, because I never learned this in school.
Okay.
And when I came across this subject, I wanted to know if we have any visuals related to this, if we have any movies about re-education phenomena, because it's something that we must know. In order to avoid these things happen again, we have to know them. So searching, I found out there is no feature film about this topic, and I decided to make a movie. It was like nearly 11 years ago. And slowly, I did what is called documentation for 4 years. So each summer, I spent it in National Communist Archives or footage archives in Romania. Then I made a press release, and I invited people able to talk and share with me information about this experiment to contact me. And so I got across like the relatives of those who were in this prison. I also met some survivors, and I collected all this information. In 2015, I started to shoot. The shootings were finished at the end of the year. And since that moment, I am crowdfunding to finish the post-production. And I hope and I believe that this year the movie will be finished and I can show it to you all in cinemas. And basically, I started to do this movie to put, the stepping stone in finding out more. Because obviously a movie, and I wanted to make sure everybody will understand, a movie is an experience, an artistical way of showing the historical facts. But the historical information can be found in books, in accurate